Hi. Let me begin by thanking the BDS Initiative Oldenburg for organizing this important meeting on Palestine. I was asked by them to address the current situation in Gaza and the so-called deal of the century, political solutions, BDS, and the impact of the arrival of COVID-19 into Gaza. Of course, I wish I could be with you in person, but for reasons most of you know, I cannot leave Gaza thanks to two viruses, namely occupation and COVID-19. So I will try to address some of the questions Comrade Christoph sent to me, contextualizing what life is like in Gaza and what Palestinian civil society thinks is the best way out. And the first question actually that was sent by my comrades there in Germany is about the prospects for a corona pandemic inside Gaza and whether Gaza can really manage such a pandemic while being under a medieval siege imposed by apartheid Israel. But I will explain what this illegal crippling Israeli siege that has shattered all spheres of life in Gaza, what it literally means. Before that, some background is of utmost necessity. I need to address some background, especially I was told that some people are not very familiar with the situation in Palestine in general and in Gaza in particular. Now, in the last, I can say 10 years, Israel has launched three massive wars of aggression on the occupied Gaza Strip. And many of our civilians were massacred by its indiscriminate bombing that was condemned by UN experts and leading human rights organizations as war crimes, possible crimes against humanity. Now, these assaults left over 3,800 civilians dead, of whom hundreds were children, and another 15,000 Palestinians were injured. Now, the 2 million Palestinians in the besieged Gaza Strip, overwhelming majority of whom are refugees, who were violently expelled and dispossessed from our homes by Zionist forces in 1948. We were subjected to 3 weeks, 2009, 2 weeks in 2012, and 51 days in 2014 of relentless Israeli state terror, whereby Israel warplanes systematically targeted civilian areas, reduced whole neighborhoods, and vital civilian infrastructure, rubble, and destroyed scores of schools, including several run by United Nations, by UNRWA, where civilians were taking shelter. Now, the point is that this came after years of an ongoing, crippling, deadly medieval siege of Gaza, which is a severe form of collective punishment, which I'm going to be addressing, of course, with more detail. Now, I want to refer a little bit back to what the International Committee of Red Cross said about the situation in Gaza. And I'm going to quote: the whole of Gaza's civilian population is being punished for acts for which they bear no responsibility. The closure of Gaza, therefore, constitutes a collective punishment imposed in clear violation of Israel's obligations under international humanitarian law. Unquote. The ICRC thus unequivocally stated that Israel's blockade of the Gaza Strip constitutes a violation of international humanitarian law embodied in the Geneva Conventions. And just to remind you, the Fourth Geneva Convention of 1949, ratified by Israel, bans collective punishment of a civilian population. And I want to add another source, which is Human Rights Watch. Human Rights Watch in 2005 said that Israel will continue to be an occupying power, the Gaza Strip, under international law, bound by the provisions of the Fourth Geneva Convention, because it will retain effective control over the territory and over crucial aspects of civilian life. Israel will not be, that was in 2005, when Israel claimed to have withdrawn its troops from the Gaza Strips. The Human Rights Watch says that Israel will not be withdrawing and handing power over to a sovereign authority in Gaza. Indeed, the word withdrawal does not appear in the 2005 disengagement document at all. And the Israeli occupation forces therefore decided to retain control over Gaza's borders, coastline, and airspace, and still reserves the right to enter Gaza at will. And according to the Hague regulations, a territory is considered occupied when it is actually placed under the authority of the hostile army. The occupation extends only to the territory where such authority has been established and can be exercised. And international jurisprudence has clarified that the mere repositioning of troops is not sufficient to relieve an occupier of its responsibilities if it retains its overall authority and the ability to reassert direct control at will. Unquote. Now, this is important. These quotes are important because they address the claim made by apartheid Israel that it has withdrawn its troops from Gaza in 2005. Let me add, in 2009, after Israel's assault on Gaza, the UN fact-finding mission, the Gaza conflict, headed by the highly respected South African judge Richard Goldstone, found Israel guilty, and I'm quoting, of war crimes and possible crimes against humanity. And notice I am not using Palestinian or Arab or third world sources. I'm using United Nations and international law sources. The same observations were made by major international human rights organizations such as Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, and even B'Tselem, the Israeli mainstream Israeli human rights organization. Same scenario of massacres that place in 2009 was repeated in 2012, worse one in 2014, only because Israel feels that it can carry on its war crimes with full impunity. So, in addition to Israel's daily attacks and airstrikes, we Gazans also suffer from the contamination of water, air, and oil, since the sewage system is unable to function due to power cuts necessitated by lack of fuel, the main generators of the Gaza power grid. Medical conditions due to injuries from internationally prohibited butterfly bullets and other illegal Israeli weapons, as well as from water contamination, cannot be treated because of the siege. So in addition to the ban on building material, Israel also prevents many other necessities from being imported. In addition to medicine, light bulbs, candles, matches, books, refrigerators, shoes, clothing, mattresses, sheets, blankets, sausage, flour, cows, pasta, cigarettes, fuel, paper, you name it. Add to this the drastic cuts endorsed by UNRWA not to mention the constant closure of the Rafah crossing, which is, by the way, the only exit Gaza has to the external world, all of which leading to one of the highest unemployment rates and poverty on the face of earth. In fact, the conclusion that we have reached in Gaza is that Israel is intent on destroying Gaza because only because world official bodies and leaders choose to say and do absolutely nothing. Now, in spite of Israel's alleged unilateral withdrawal from the Strip in 2005, still maintains a permanent military presence in Gaza's territorial waters, as I mentioned. It controls the movement of people and goods onto the Strip by land and water, in addition to movement within the Strip through targeting anyone entering the so-called no-go zone designated by the Israeli military. Israel also continues to control Gaza's population registry. Yet Israel claims that it is no longer the occupying power in the Gaza Strip and uses this excuse in addition to the results of the 2006 democratic elections taking place in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, using these excuses to intensify its policy of siege and lethal attacks on Gaza's civilians. And now Israel has decided to become openly an apartheid state by legalizing racial discrimination. I have tried, believe me, very hard to find out whether there are constitutions or laws in the world similar to Israel's new nation state basic law, which aims to establish legal basis for Jewish supremacy and racism against indigenous Palestinians, including those living in what has become the largest open air prison on earth, Gaza. And I found that only South Africa under apartheid and America in the eras of slavery and segregation, following almost the same kind of nation basic law that Israel has decided to establish. And people keep asking me, why does Israel do this to the Palestinians in general and to those in Gaza in particular? Well, the reason is very, very clear. You don't need, as I say, to be a brain surgeon or an Einstein in order to understand why. 80% of Gazans are refugees who are entitled to their right of return. Those refugees were ethnically cleansed in 1948 by apartheid Israel, by the Zionist gangs at the time, and they are a constant reminder of the original sin. And I know that I'm addressing Germans, some of whom are feeling a sense of guilt towards what Germany did to Jews in 1948. Unfortunately, we are paying the price for a pogrom committed by the Nazis before 1948, during the Second World War, I mean. We are paying a heavy price for that. We did not commit that pogrom, but we are paying a price for that. Not Germany. Palestinians are paying the price. And, and, and no, now we have the epidemic to deal with. I've already mentioned what the siege means. Now we have another virus, Corona, COVID-19, an epidemic to deal with. Now, while many countries shut borders and enforce curfews, etc., we thought that Gaza, in a way, was somewhat isolated, thanks to the siege, of course, from the coronavirus pandemic. But as it has with so much of the rest of the world, COVID-19 found a way into Gaza. The moment we are managing, to deal with the existing 10 cases until last night, yesterday we had 9, and last night the spokesperson of the Ministry of Health talked about a 10th case. But if the pandemic increases, happened in some countries, then we are in deep trouble. Gaza, so some information, Gaza has only 40 intensive care unit beds, and only 65 ventilators for a population of 2 million. So now, to make it easier for my audience, my German audience, while you in Germany have 29.2 ICU beds, intensive care unit beds, per 100,000, we have only 2 ICU beds for 100,000 patients. And as I explained, Gaza's healthcare system is already collapsing. It was collapsing before the pandemic. Let me refer to what Michael Link, the UN Special Rapporteur for Human Rights in the Palestinian territory, what he warned of last week. He said, and I'm going to quote him, he said, Gaza's stocks of essential drugs are chronically low. Its natural sources of drinkable water are largely contaminated. Its electrical system provides sporadic power. Deep poverty amid population, amid appalling economic conditions is prevalent throughout the strip. That's what quote. That's what Michael Link, UN Special Rapporteur for Human Rights in the Palestinian territories, had to say only last week. And as if, excuse me, as if 12 years of blockade, now 13, of course, interrupted by 3 genocidal wars is not enough. Never before has a population been denied the basic requirements for survival as a deliberate policy of colonization, occupation, and apartheid. Never. But this is what is apartheid Israel is doing to us, the people of Gaza. Today, 2 million people here in Gaza live without a secure supply of water, food, electricity, medicines, with almost half of us being children under the age of 15. So for us, it's crystal clear that apartheid Israel does not want to accept that the epidemic harms everybody on earth, even the Palestinians. For Israel, no, it doesn't harm the Palestinians. And that's why it is tightening its siege on Gaza. So now, the second question, what to do? What can we do? What can you do? What can the international community do? Well, very simple. The outside world has to intervene. We have learned lessons from South Africa. The world intervened against the apartheid system of South Africa. We want the outside world to intervene. Hence our call for BDS, boycott, divestment, and sanctions. No wonder then that leading anti-apartheid activists, the likes of even Nelson Mandela and the likes of Ahmed Katrada, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, believe that what Israel is doing to the Palestinians is far worse than what was done to black South Africans under apartheid. Even former American President Jimmy Carter, on his visit to Gaza, stated clearly that the Palestinian people trapped in Gaza are being treated, I'm quoting Jimmy Carter, like animals. And as I always say, and every single public talk, I reiterate the popular sentiment in Gaza. The popular sentiment in Gaza is that we are fed up. We have reached the conclusion that our fight in the form of popular resistance can pose serious challenge to Israel's system of occupation, colonization, and apartheid if it is accompanied by a global campaign of boycott, divestment, and sanctions. And this is why, excuse me, and this is why we do need ordinary citizens such as yourselves of the world to show Israel that what we have, that we actually have common humanity, that Israel can or rather those ordinary citizens, that they are watching what it is doing, what Israel is doing to us, and they will not tolerate it. Excuse me. They will not tolerate it because silence is simply complicity. There is no place for Israel's kind of warmongering and barbarism in the world, and that the people of the world reject it. This is exactly what the global anti-apartheid campaign managed to do in the 70s and 80s of last century until the inhumane apartheid system crumbled. It is time to stand up the only remaining apartheid regime in the world. For that, we need to be united. We need your support. And in case some people don't know, BDS is Civil Society Initiative. 2005, Palestinian civil society, the overwhelming majority of Palestinian civil society, issued a statement calling on the international community to intervene, boycott apartheid Israel, divest from it and from international companies profiting from its oppression of the Palestinian people, and impose sanctions against it exactly the same way the international community intervened against the apartheid system of South Africa. So we, the victims of a multi-tiered system of oppression, occupation, colonization, and apartheid, fighting on behalf of the international community for the rule of law. Namely, we are fighting for the implementation of United Nations Resolution 194, which calls for the right of return of refugees, Palestinian refugees, towns and villages from which we were ethnically cleansed in 1948. We want Israel to withdraw its troops from the Gaza Strip and the West Bank and Eastern Jerusalem, areas which it occupied illegally in 1967. And we want Israel to end its discriminatory laws, apartheid laws that it exercises against the Palestinian citizens of Israel itself, 2 million Palestinian citizens of Israel. So this is why we have decided to send a very clear message. Enough is enough. For that, we are paying a very heavy price. Our children are being butchered on camera in broad daylight. The world is standing by, watching, doing absolutely nothing. And this is why we have reached the conclusion that the only window of hope we have BDS, boycott, divestment, and sanctions, targeting Israel, protest against its apartheid laws towards us, targeting settler colonialism. And this is why we call on you to promote a culture of boycott of Israel, similar to the one you led, some of you led, against the inhumane apartheid system in South Africa. And you know that one question that was sent to me is about the political vision, and I need to make it absolutely clear that the BDS campaign is a rights-based movement. It doesn't say anything about political solutions, whether one-state solution or two-state solution. But since I was asked, and here I am expressing my personal views, is that the two-state solution, the racist solution par excellence, that you are in a way implementing apartheid. In fact, are separating Israelis from Palestinians based on their ethno-religious identities. So you have Palestinians, Christians and Muslims, living on only 22% of historic Palestine, and that is impossible now, by the way, after the Trump's deal of century has been announced and even being implemented by Israel now in Palestine. So you are separating Palestinians from Israeli Jews based on their ethno-religious identity, and that is racism. That is apartheid. That is not different from, recognizing the infamous Bantustan system of South Africa, where black South Africans were given what is called, independent homelands for natives of South Africa, and I think it was about 12% of historic land of South Africa. And then the whites had about 88% of South Africa. The world did not recognize that. Nelson Mandela refused to accept anything shorter than one person, one vote. This is why I think secular democracy in Palestine is the only possible pragmatic solution. One person, one vote. After the return of Palestinian refugees to the towns and villages from which they were ethnically cleansed in 1948, then one person, one vote. Then you have a secular democratic state, a state for all of citizens, regardless of ethnicity, regardless of gender, regardless of religion, etc., etc. This is what you have in Germany. This is what South Africa has, of course, after the collapse of the apartheid system in 1994 and the election of Nelson Mandela. The ANC became the ruling party, a coalition with the SACP, South African Communist Party, and COSATU, the trade unions. And this is what you have in the United States of America, secular democracy. No true liberal can oppose that. No true secular can oppose that. State for all citizens. And notice, this is a compromise. This is a compromise given by the natives of Palestine to settlers. And I was asked about the right to self-determination. Whites of South Africa did not have the right to self-determination. Blacks of South Africa were generous enough to give them the right to vote in a multicultural, multiracial country. And this is what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that we need to reach a historic compromise. This historic compromise depends on the generosity of the native population of Palestine. And what we are offering is equality for all inhabitants of historic Palestine, a state for all of its citizens, regardless of religion and ethnicity and gender, etc., etc. And I think that is the only time when we can start talking about peace, real peace with justice. What we are fighting for right now is freedom, equality, justice. Justice for all inhabitants of historic Palestine. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. And I hope that we'll be able to have public talk next year in Free Palestine.